And now I'm with Wing Commander Mike Pollitt. Now, Mike, you flew Vulcans.
I certainly did. I flew Vulcans from the mid-70s right up until 1981. 1981 was the year before the Falklands campaign, so unfortunately I missed that. But yes, I was a Vulcan captain at the end of the Cold War.
So what was it like flying one of those beautiful Vulcan bombers?
It was an immense privilege. She has immense power. If you think of the power of a Formula One car, 850 to 950 horsepower. Each Vulcan engine, the Olympus engine, was developing 52,000 horsepower, so immense power and very, very manoeuvrable. It was like flying a fighter. And manoeuvrability was one of her key defense weapons against the Soviet fighters of the time. And the capability to outturn a Soviet fighter was the aim of AV-RO.
That is incredible.
Yes, well, she was designed initially to fly at high altitude, but when the Soviets improved their surface-to-air missiles and shot down Gary Powers in the U-2 spy plane in 1960, all our high-level tactics became obsolete virtually overnight.
So you had to go low level.
So we had to go low level, the aim being to get under the Russian radars, but we didn't have the fuel to go low level all the way. So the missions used to fly up to about 40,000 feet towards Scandinavia, and when the air electronics officer, one of the crew, in the rear crew, picked up the long-range Russian radars, that was our signal to descend, and we descend over the Baltic, run into the Soviet Union towards our target. I'm not allowed to tell you even today what the target was, but it was a military airfield.
Wow. Because you could also carry conventional weapons as well as the nuclear weapons.
That's absolutely right. We trained predominantly to use the nuclear weapon, and all our tactical training was around that ploy. But she did have the capability to carry 21 1,000-pound bombs, which was, of course, the weapon of choice against the Argentine forces in the Falklands.
Okay, so how long did it take you to learn to fly a Vulcan bomber?
Well, you do basic training initially, and so you fly the Jet Provost, or the Tucanos they do these days, then go on to the Hawk. And so by the time you get to the Vulcan Operational Conversion Unit, you've got about 2.5 years experience already, with 500 hours flying behind you. And then you have 6 months to learn how to fly the Vulcan.
It's got a great wingspan though, hasn't it? That V, a proper V.
Delta wing, yeah 111 foot is the wingspan.
Wow.
And she stands at the fin is 28 feet above the ground. So yes, it's a big aircraft, about the size these days of a Boeing 320, but still very large for her day.
Yeah.
And it's
very manoeuvrable, you say?
Superb manoeuvrability. She would outturn Phantoms and Lightnings at high altitude.
Really? I mean, you don't think that of a bomber, do you?
No, you don't. And that was her great defence, to outmaneuver air-to-air missiles and Soviet fighters.
I'm now with Martin Withers. Now, Martin, you are a Vulcan pilot.
Yes, I'm fortunately still say I'm a Vulcan pilot. I was first a Vulcan pilot in 1971, and then stayed on the Vulcan as a co-pilot and a captain. Then became a flying instructor and was one of the last Vulcan pilots as well, so I thought, in service. And as it happens, I'm still a Vulcan pilot because I'm chief pilot for Vulcan to the Sky, who operate the one and only flying Vulcan in the world. The aircraft itself is simple to fly in the sense that it hasn't got any lift augmentation device, no flaps. You just have one speed. You can take off and your stalling speed is the same as soon as you bring the gear up, or with the air brakes out, the gear down, doesn't really make much difference. So you just raise the gear and you get airborne, and then you fly the same aeroplane. And it will go from really quite low speed right up to full speed without any change in configuration.
So what is the full speed?
Well, in service, we were limited to 415 knots. Right, going round the bay, he would have been flying at about 160 knots, about 180 miles an hour.
But looks so
it's big.
Slow.
Well, that's right, because it's big, obviously, and it was covering quite a few miles doing that. You should find that once you've seen a Vulcan, you always remember it. Yes. I remember the first Vulcan which I ever saw, and I was about 8 years old. And my mother had a friend who lived at a place called Poynton, just outside Manchester, which is near where the aircraft were manufactured.